As to whether the term digital native is relevant today, when I first came across the term digital native in Boyd 2014, it struck a chord with me. Not because it resonated and I felt it to be true, but because I'd recently been discussing the level of, or lack of, digital skills of our secondary school students with colleagues after the first COVID lockdown period, March 2020. On my original reading and understanding of the concept, I thought that according to the digital natives theory, I would be classed as a digital immigrant, as social media didn't exist when I was a child. However, as is demonstrated in my PLE, I am digitally fluent. For this reason, I felt challenged by the concept and a desire to investigate its relevance to my current context. Later, when reading more widely on the topic, I remarked that Prensky 2001A stated that people born in the 80s onwards were digital natives, in contrast to the Collins Dictionary definition, Collins 2021. I was born in 1980, so according to Prensky's theory, I would be included in this range. I found this curious as I did not feel like I grew up immersed in the digital world. Reflecting on this, I recalled that I set up my first email account with Yahoo when I was at sixth form college, age 17 or 18, that I got my first mobile phone age 19 when I started university. I wrote some of my undergraduate degree assignments by hand on paper, and later I would go to the late night computer room on campus to complete them. It was not the norm to have your own computer then, at least not amongst my peers. My experience of the digital world growing up seems on first glance limited. It did not seem to me to constitute growing up surrounded by digital tools and platforms. Since these initial reflections, I've recalled more engagement with digital devices when I was young and from a younger age. I recall playing the Daley Thompson game on my Amstrad computer with the green screen, sometimes with my neighbour James, and I had a Sega Master System, later a Commodore 64 for playing games on. I remember using teletext on the television, although I don't remember what for. In addition, I recall that my mum worked from home for a period and had an Apple Mac computer from work around the late 80s to early 90s. I did know how to type and lay out a letter, my mum taught me. So perhaps in the big picture of what was happening in the digital world, 1980 to 2000, my experience would have counted as being immersed in the digital world. Clearly, when measuring by today's standards of what I and my students use technology for on a daily basis, and the UK government's outline of essential digital skills, DFE 2018, this would not count as such, but times were different then. In terms of digital nativism, it's unclear from merely reading my PLE whether it is the PLE of someone who grew up immersed in a world of digital devices, who therefore would be classed as a digital native, or not. This fits with research questioning the digital natives theory and the dismissal of the idea that digital competence is based on age and generation. Selwyn 2009, Kian et al. 2013, Boyd 2014. During emergency remote learning in lockdown, I was surprised by the lack of basic digital literacy skills of some students. As a languages teacher, I had used digital tools in the computer room of all of my classes prior to this. However, I use digital platforms with them that are specific to educational languages such as Quizlet, Memrise, both for vocabulary learning, retrieval practice, low stakes testing, and Active Learn, the online learning platform for our textbook publisher Pearson. In addition to this, I taught research projects where students had to research and present information relating to cultural aspects of French, German and Spanish-speaking cultures. During these activities, I would notice that some students would struggle with things that I found intuitive, like knowing which button to press in the browser window when on a platform. I also noticed that some lack skills which I find essential to my daily use of computers, such as how to copy and paste, and use shortcut codes for common functions, or add an attachment to an email. I would go to the computer room once or twice per term with each class, depending on availability of computer rooms, which was limited. Therefore, these difficulties with digital literacy were not on display to me very often. During the first COVID lockdown, when all were doing emergency remote learning, I noticed a lot more instances where students did not know how to perform basic skills, such as not knowing how to log into their school email account, even though the username and password on Office 365 is exactly the same as they use in school. Not knowing what download meant or how to download a document. Not being able to navigate a website they've seen on a desktop on their phone. Not using appropriate language with teachers online, slipping into informal social register. Those who contest the digital natives theory, Bennett et al. 2008, Helsper and Enyon 2010, Kian et al. 2013, assert that it is simplistic, perhaps idealistic in terms of the view of the younger generation. Helsper and Enyon 2010 demonstrate that there is more to an individual's level of use of the internet than when they were born, and that socioeconomic status and the digital divide are greater determinants of digital skills. This is supported by Selwyn 2009 and Calderon Gomez 2019, whose research supports the idea that the digital native concept is flawed and that there are many more nuances to digital divide and therefore level of digital competencies in terms of access and skills. Kian et al. 2013 demonstrate that there are other factors which influence digital fluency, not just age and when people were born, but for example, gender across age groups, socioeconomic circumstances and motivation. They argue that, quote, accessibility to technology does not guarantee better technology usage. Kian et al. 2013, page 410. Even if they've grown up surrounded by digital devices, it's not guaranteed that young people will be able to use them any better than their elders. What resonated with me in debates around digital natives theory was the notion that by asserting that young people naturally have advanced digital skills, we, teachers and the state, can wash our hands of having to teach digital literacy to students or having to learn about it ourselves. UK government policy, DfE 2019, does not broach this subject. Perhaps the lack of urgency in policy making and in the national curriculum to commit to teaching digital fluency is partly due to the fact that education in the UK still follows an industrial, paternalistic model and does not focus on teaching about power, agency and active citizenship, some of the skills developed through digital fluency. Clearly, it is still relevant to explore those who engage with digital literacy and those who don't, those who are excluded. And whilst the term digital natives may no longer be relevant due to there not being enough evidence to support Prensky's claim, Bennett et al. 2008, Helsper and Enyon 2010, it is clear that it is still relevant to explore those who engage with digital literacy and those who don't use digital tools due to the far-reaching impact this has on the lives of individuals and communities. ONS 2019.